All right, so I'm just gonna react to some stuff today and see what's up.
That outpost in Jordan had little warning of the incoming drone.
The attack came before sunrise early
Oh, it was
Sunday.
a drone
at an
strike.
American base in northeast Jordan. CBS News has learned those injured and killed were in sleeping quarters when the armed drone struck. The outpost, known as Tower 22, supports U.S. Special Forces operating inside Syria, where they're under constant threat of attack. President Biden, campaigning in South Carolina on Sunday, blamed Iranian-backed militias and vowed to retaliate.
We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases, and we shall respond.
Since the Hamas invasion,
Every life is precious in my mind. Loss of a life is never good. But man, what is it about Americans that always have to put on this bravado and think, something bad is happening? Let me not look at the line of events that are happening, right? The succession of causation that's happening. Nah, we're gonna get revenge right now. We're not even gonna let the bodies get cold or even put them in a hole. Let the families grieve. It's all about the reaction, the war.
of Israel in October, U.S. military sites in Iraq and Syria have been attacked more than 160 times. Sunday's deadly attack sparked bipartisan condemnation and swift Republican calls to directly attack Iran now.
Rushing.
Bro, Trump literally needs to do nothing. He's just doing the kick back and enjoy the show strategy. I feel like it is the dumbest thing you could do to put your entire lineage and like the re-election chances you have directly in the pooper in a blender and just blending that at the behest of a dude who very openly has mentioned, Netanyahu, who's very openly mentioned that he hates you and does not want you to get reelected and wants Trump to get reelected. It does not make any sense that Brandon is expanding the conflict.
And it's crazy that this psychopath, well, not crazy. It's clear to understand why Netanyahu doesn't like Biden, despite him, giving him, billions in military, okay, why do I keep saying, despite giving them billions in military aid, I get it. He's not right wing enough for you. There, from everything that I've been learning, especially since October 7th, I'm realizing that the political system is heavily right leaning in Israel. Something I did not actually realize. So I obviously not going to like the Democratic candidate, especially someone like Joe Biden, who honestly is just not popular in his own country. It's a lot to ask that Netanyahu or Israelis are going to care about him. He's not even popular in his own country.
Making it worse, and every step of the way, the media is literally going, well, they're trying to retaliate in a way that doesn't escalate. And it's like, what do you mean? Pull out.
Injuries could increase in the coming hours or days, and this is the largest loss of life for the U.S. military to enemy action since the fall of Afghanistan.
It's so funny because it's like, bro, they keep escalating, and then there is retaliation every single time. They keep escalating and there's retaliation. They keep escalating and there's retaliation. And then they just keep doing it over and over again. These guys do not care. Fighting against America solidifies their position, whether it be the Houthis, Ansar Allah, or whether it be Iran. Fighting against America makes them look good. They have the money, they have the willingness. They don't have anything else to lose in this circumstance. They stand to gain. They stand to benefit. So constantly trying to fix the situation by blowing them up is so idiotic. I don't know what to say. There is no such thing as de-escalatory bombing. There's a calculation that one must make here. There is somewhat of a balance.
So insane. Every time I, walk anywhere else in my house and, the older generation are watching CNN and I hear the discussion that's going on about, but they're doing this to contain this. They're doing this bombing to contain this. They're doing it to, make sure it's not a regional thing. It's like, okay, Israel bombed the hell out of Gaza. The Houthis in Yemen then start stopping ships from going through. America bombs the hell out of Yemen. And now, Iranian-backed groups, I'm going to just give them that. That's what the wording they use from it. But Iran hasn't taken responsibility for any of this. But Iranian-backed groups now attack actual, American U.S. Army bases. And it's just, It's how are you telling me that it's an escalation when the reaction and the retaliations are becoming closer and closer to home for you? Now Americans are dying. It just doesn't make sense to me that you will think that this is somehow, or you can be convinced that this is somehow, oh, this retaliation is to to calm down things. It's to quell the uproar that's happening in the region. That's foolishness.
2, endless military conquest. Too much chaos and too much war, it will lead to a situation of instability. Israel, on the other hand, is profitable in the short term, not profitable if situation continues and escalates. Does that make sense? America is losing its soft power. It's just stupid. It makes no sense.
However it happened, it did. Three U.S. servicemen are now dead, and the Middle East is bracing for the U.S. response.
We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases.
Yes.
I'd ask you for a moment of silence for all 3 of those fallen souls.
The killing of American soldiers in the Middle East is the moment Joe Biden had been.
Listen, I can hear one of the ladies in the background. It is not lost on me that it was 3 black service people that ended up dying. There's so many more questions than there are answers. It's awful that you have minorities so highly, disproportionately represented in, the job where you go to die. It's awful that their names are going to be used to kill so many other people who are also marginalized. I mean, on a global scale, a Yemeni or a Iraqi or someone from Iran is not enjoying even like remotely this when I'm sitting in front of. They're not enjoying remotely the same quality of life, though they're still happy, which is the fucked up part, because people here aren't. All of that's not lost on me. It's just gonna be more death, more young people dying because old decrepit souls like this decided before they pass they want to take more with them.
Been dreading, but the president is unequivocal about the next step.
Do you not think overthrowing the regime in Iran will be good? Most of the citizens in Iran want that. No, dude, if you want to overthrow the regime in Iran, let the fucking Iranians do it. We don't get to have a say in this process because our interference in Iran is what caused the current regime in Iran to begin with. When will people understand? Like, we should not have a say in these affairs. Holy moly, dude. Says who? You? Yeah, I just don't understand, like, the mentality of the average American being like, I don't understand. Why don't we just, like, overthrow the regime in Iran? You think America's not trying? What do you think is going on? What do you think the MEK is?
Or what do you
See, I agree with that, and as someone who's not American, I really do question that too. Like, I don't know what this like main story narcissism brand of bullshit that people have been coming on with lately. How do you, as a sovereign person who would never expect just even in a comical sense, you would be pissed as hell if Mexico came into America and all they did was try to overthrow the way you guys cook tacos. They have every right. It's one of the foods that is more aligned with their culture than yours. But you would still lose your mind about any interference from another country, even if it was tacos. As an American, you'd lose your mind, but you can just glibly say, why didn't you just overthrow the government over there? See? Like, what is this, the 1930s, and we just think we're going to do the World War thing forever? What are you talking about?
think America will do next?
I think striking Shia-based militants in Iraq and Syria is almost a certainty that you're going to see that in retaliation. The real question is whether or not the U.S. is going to decide that at this point, this is all about Iran, and that you're going to have to see either covertly or overtly strikes and efforts against Iran directly in a way that we really haven't seen yet.
Isn't it also true that the crux of the matter is the war in Gaza? If the U.S. were to address that...
Hold on. She's actually, wait, who is this? This is 4 News? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the publication, but she's actually attacking the crux of the problem. A lot of the reasons why I literally have to roll my eyes and, put my headphones in so I don't have to hear this bullshit when I walk by, a TV playing CNN is because they never ever talk about how it happens. They'll talk about how it starts. October 14th of last year, when they talked about how it started, it was October 7th. But we all know that's not true. We all know that the Palestinians didn't just start being oppressed on the 7th. And we all know there hasn't, it hasn't just been since the 7th of October that there's been a military conflict between, the Hamas militants who are representative of the Palestinian people in Gaza and IDF or IOF. But, we'll leave that alone.
More forcibly with Israel. Is that not getting to the actual?
Well, earlier I spoke to the retired US general and former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, Wesley Clark. I asked him what action he thinks the US should now take.
Look at the chat, World War III time. I'm not blaming him for it, but this is, and I'm not blaming him for it at all. I'm not saying there's anything to be blamed for, but this is the general feeling that a lot of people who, aren't the average human being who's just watches news casually and not really tapped into everything that's happening. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I wish I could be like that. My brain, I think my mental health would be a lot better. And this is the only reason I want to do things like this. I want to be able to, speak on these things that are now permanently stuck in my brain and actually add something to the conversation other than, World War III. I'm not blaming these people, but still, it's clear that everybody has it on their mind. Everybody who at least is has been paying attention to the tit for tat bombing back and forward that's happening.
Yes, you have to take the initiative away from the enemy. What I would call it is.
Sorry, I keep drinking. I am thirsty. I am sick.
Dominance.
So I gotta keep
apologizing
hydrated.
for escalating as they keep hitting. So you got to hit back so hard that they say, okay, we've had enough. We're not going to strike back again. And that means you must go.
Time for a nuclear first strike, folks. Good stuff. Thank you, General Wesley Clark.
Now, strikes in Iran itself, on Iranian territory.
That's right.
Yeah.
That would be, if I were in the chain of command, that's what I.
This is an old bag of dicks who's not going to really exist on the earth for even a decade, if the earth does exist for that long. He's not going to be here, and he's horny, literally visibly horny, over the prospect of dropping bombs on Iran directly.
I'd be recommending, because the tit for tat doesn't work. And we know that historically. We saw this when I was a young officer in Vietnam. Tit for tat doesn't work. You want to make a difference, you must use decisive force.
Yeah, Vietnam. So
What
much
a
tit
psycho.
for tat happened in Vietnam, which then was a decisive victory, I guess. He just brought up Vietnam, where we literally use a disproportionate use of force against a broadly civilian population, and then got our pushed it. You just proved the entire opposite point that you were trying to make. Not only did we go.
And this is an interesting point, because they've deluded themselves to think that all of their military conquests are successful, so therefore all military conquests are worth doing.
Oh, absolutely balls to the wall in Vietnam in the least ethical ways possible in our illegal domination, but we also lost.
And how do you factor in American domestic politics here? Because you have Donald Trump saying President Biden is leading you into World War III. And saying none of this would have happened had he been president. How does that change the calculation as to what to do?
Well, I think that it's inevitable that there will be some effort on the part of politicians to make some domestic hay out of this. But I think statesmen have to rise above the domestic politics. And I think this is a case where President Biden has to choose what's right for.
The statesmen have to rise above domestic politics and bomb Iran. I want you to understand. He's saying Biden has to rise to the occasion to bomb Iran.
Isn't the other way to stop this, though, to stop the war in Gaza? You stop that war in Gaza, you stop the Houthi attacks on shipping, you stop these Iranian-backed attacks.
I'm interested to hear what this horny for violence old man says to that.
Invasion. Like, he's taking the maximalist position here. He's saying, like, no, we have to kill everyone in Iran. I hope you guys understand. His position, even before Israel, even before the Houthis, is to end Iran. His argument is, let's kill as many people as possible. I don't know how else he can make it clearer here. He just said, Iran will always have the capacity to strike ships at the Red Sea no matter what, which implies that the real problem isn't even the Houthis, it's Iran. This is one school of thought in the State Department that we have advocated for in perpetuity. You have the John Boltons of the world obviously saying this kind of dumb shit.
Advisor to President Trump, Ambassador John Bolton.
As well. It's psychotic because it's like becoming a bipartisan consensus almost. Holden Blood Feast, Republican Iowa, 118 years old. Please, God, just let us nuke Iran. Nothing else matters. I'll do anything, please. I just want to see burning flesh one last time before I die. Respectable. bipartisan. Good stuff.
It's a regional hegemon. And so I think we have to be careful. Although it's popular in the press to pull all this together, in fact, it's entirely different. For Israel, what's happening in Gaza is an existential threat. Israel cannot.
That's crazy. Yeah, Israel is an existential threat. Iran is an existential threat to the United States. Palestinians are an existential threat to Israel. It always feels like there's an existential threat out there to like America and America's allies, man. It's crazy. He's like, it's not connected. They're just totally valid in doing what they're doing.
Continue business as usual with Hamas embedded in tunnels with weapons being.
Yeah, by the way, Israel's doing so good in Gaza that they still, yeah, I know it's Beanie Tuesday. Original artist, by the way. Yeah, I've been following him for a long time.
Well, I then spoke to Syed Mohammed Marandi, who's a professor at the University of Tehran. And I began by asking what he thinks would happen if the United States took that kind of military action against Iran.
It would bring down the global economy because Iranian military forces will respond decisively against American military.
And this is the thing. They're always on this thing like, oh, we're going to be decisive. Like no other country on earth, decisively wants to protect themselves from your goofy murdering assholes. I don't get it. This weird thought process that like only Americans and its allies would decisively defend against something they see as unfair. What is this thought process that you're expecting for these victims to be like, oh yeah, well, we deserved it, martyr us?
Don't feed the Russian China-backed Iran troll. Oh my God. Former Supreme Commander of NATO ignoring the Russian nesting doll that is this Iranian trap. The Russian nesting doll. Listen, chatter. Iran's actions, or rather Hamas and Israel's retaliation to Hamas, has been genuinely beneficial for Russian interests. That is true. But I think we have to remember that, we are massively culpable in the way that we change our attention and direct our attention into Gaza rather than Ukraine. Like, it is in a way no different than saying like, well, Hamas made Israel do genocide in Gaza. It's like, oh, Russia is making America shift their resources away from Ukraine and into Israel so that Israel can do a genocide. I don't know what to tell you, but like at a certain point, we have a little bit of culpability, I think.
Across the region and in the Persian Gulf in particular, and those regimes in the Persian Gulf that host U.S. bases would be seen as hostile, and therefore their key oil and gas infrastructure would be not out of bounds.
And so the question of retaliation is there's no doubt in your mind, because General Clark argues that, the
two aren't.
Why would there be a doubt in your mind? Obviously, even just if the General Clark was an actual active general, these would be words that would be taken very seriously by the Iranian government and their military. There's no way that you're going to say that this government in Iran needs to be overthrown because the people of Iran don't want them, while not also understanding that the people of Iran also want to live. So they're going to, you killing them will only give the Iranian government right now an easy out to have a little bit of popular support by saying, hey, well, we're about to go fuck these guys up for hitting you. So we'll figure it out. Stay with us. We'll figure it out for you. We'll protect you.
And I'm fairly sure Hezbollah wasn't attacking across Israel's northern border. The Houthis weren't firing missiles at drones and ships in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. And the level of attacks in Syria and Iraq were not the same before October 7th. Yeah. Anyone that says that these concepts are not linked are wrong. Of course they're linked. It's Israel being an American proxy and everyone else in the region either having a genuine interest in emancipation and also operating as an Iranian proxy or just operating straight up as an Iranian proxy.
The government in Tehran is not popular with the whole population, and that a decisive military strike might make it stop and pause and say, no, this is where we back off.
I think when Trump murdered the Iranian general who led the fight against ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria and Iraq, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which the Americans and their allies helped create. When the United States murdered him, we saw the millions of people in Tehran go to his funeral. I think the Americans should not believe their own propaganda.
What is Iran's strategy? Is it trying to say, unless you stop the bombing in Gaza, all of this is going to get worse?
That's not an Iranian strategy. That's clear as day to everyone. The United States likes to think, or likes to pretend, and your government likes to pretend, that everyone in this region is an Iranian proxy. Yemen is an Iranian proxy. Lebanon is an Iranian proxy. Hamas is an Iranian proxy. Iraqi is if that's the case, then we are the superpower, not the United States.
But all of those structures do get support.
And he's 100% right. If by that definition, if you're going to say the whole of the Middle East is Iranian proxies, then, you know, maybe you do have an existential threat on your hand, but that's not real. That's just, they seem to align because they seem to all have something in common. You wanting to have military bases up in their business. That's simple.
From Iran, don't they? You know, there are Iranian Revolutionary Guard in Syria. You send weapons to the Houthis. It's clear that there are clear lines. So I'm just trying to work out what is the strategy to stop Israel, or what is the current Iranian government strategy?
As long as this continues, the situation is going to get worse. And have no doubt that the United States will not win this battle.
Do you think we are now on the road to a big escalation and, I mean, really a world war?
I don't think the United States is that stupid to...
I disagree, sir. You seem very well read, but I disagree. I think stupidity isn't even the beginning of it. I think it's hubris. I think it's bravado. I genuinely think you might be a little bit wrong there, but you know, it is what it is.
To launch an attack on Iran because it will destroy the world economy. And the United States is already losing the war in Ukraine, and in its competition with China, it's not doing well at all. This is not a war that the Americans can win. It will definitely lose.
I mean, that's very interesting because it's exactly what General Clark said is the Iranian view, that as long as they think America won't attack them with full force, they will carry on doing what they're doing. And you're sort of illustrating that point.
Someone said,
have no doubt.
Sorry, I missed it. Someone said, catch me in Canada. Yeah. You won't be safe there either, brother.
No doubt. Iran is fully prepared for an American strike. But the United States will feel the consequences immediately. Iran is not Yemen. Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not Syria, and it's not Hamas. It's not even Vietnam. The United States would be making the greatest miscalculation of the 21st century and the 20th century combined.
But why is my man spitting so hard though? Why is he's hitting that? He's like, this will be he hit his anime villain speech arc.
I like that Wesley guys, stop posting Millennium Challenge. I know. They had to they got owned by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in the Millennium Challenge. I know, I've talked about it a million times over. The real problem is that this dude is kind of riding Iran too hard. He's right. He's not wrong, I think, partially because it would be, I guess it would be the closest to World War III. How is he riding Iran hard? He said Iran would retaliate aggressively and it would genuinely create danger for the global economy. You can't say this dude is kind of riding Iran too hard. The global economy would get destroyed, question mark, when simultaneously so many people are losing their minds over what Yemen is doing. Yemen is nothing. Ansar Allah is nothing. They are literally a proxy that was genocided until a year ago. I don't think you understand. Russia did that to Ukraine. Iran would be doing it to Saudi Arabia and many other places. The idea that these two things are the same, you're not getting your energy from Ukraine. And even then, Russia itself, due to the sanctions, decided to over the United States. OPEC Plus is a big part of the reason why our gas prices were absolutely destroyed. That was for limitations on supply, artificial limitations on supply. Imagine having real limitations on supply, real limitations caused by straight up rockets falling on top of the refineries. Doesn't Iran have one?
Yep. How does Saudi Arabia, continue with its sweetheart offensive of sports washing its crimes away? How does it continue when no player wants to be sitting and going to games and risking their lives traveling around in an area where rockets are just flying? No. All of those players that went to the Saudi League are out if Iran decides they want to get on some shit.
One of the weakest economies right now, and the Houthis are disrupting trade, but the word adapted pretty quickly. Don't get me wrong, but it would hurt the world economy. Guys, this isn't to say like, oh, dude, Iran would win or anything like that. I'm just simply saying, if you have nothing to lose and you stand to gain a tremendous amount, you can do an incredible return on investment with like very little funds. If the Houthis aren't a perfect example of that, I don't know what else to tell you. The Houthis are not like the Ansar Allah administration is coming off of the heels of a genocide. You have Hezbollah, not in great economic circumstances in Lebanon, but still, that's like a standing operational military, much better weapons. And then you have Iran. It genuinely does not take much, but in comparison to what Iran has, well, it has a lot more than than Hezbollah does. It has a lot more than Yemen does, certainly. I'm trying to explain to you that if Iran started directly targeting the energy infrastructure that the rest of the world relies on, I mean, due to its very obvious capabilities that they've demonstrated already, if they did that across the board, that would genuinely tank the global economy. I don't know how to describe it. I'm not saying like, you know how like Americans will be like, oh, dude, my dad's could beat up your dad's style. And they talk about like, oh, dude, America's not going full force. If they were going full force, like it would be over. It'd be over. That's not how wars are fought. It's not like you just like throw humans in the pile and just like cause them to get grinded by the meat grinder. Well, that's kind of how Russia fights its wars, but America doesn't fight wars like that. It is
That's
a
why they have such
calculation,
bad
it is a war of attrition,
fucking
and it is
morale.
it is a war fought on economic grounds. A lot of people have this kind of attitude where they genuinely think like, you know, it's like a Pokemon battle or something. And it's like, well, I have the stronger Pokemon. I have the better weapons. It's like, no, dude, why do you think Vietnam was a loss? Why do you think Afghanistan was a loss? Do you think America simply wasn't going hard enough on Afghanistan or Vietnam, as a matter of fact? Do you think we are not stronger than the Taliban? John Kirby goes mask off when asked if Biden is going to look at the American people for his decision making.
I just want to follow up because the president was sent a letter on Friday from a bipartisan group of lawmakers, and he had been accused of unauthorized strikes against the Houthis by bypassing Congress.
This is so bad.
The president, regardless of political party,
so bad.
The constitutional authority to bypass Congress on matters of war. Do you think that that would apply here, given this escalation?
We're not at war with the Houthis. We're not looking for a war with Iran. The president is comfortable that he has the appropriate legal authorities to act in self-defense of our ships, our sailors, and our troops in our facilities at sea or ashore.
Right. Isn't it time to involve the American people? I mean, given the fact that the American people were not happy about...
I suspect the American people are not happy about attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. I also suspect they're not happy about seeing American troops killed at a base in Jordan. The president has the authority to defend those troops in those facilities, and he'll do that.
He's weighing all of his options. This is an election year. Is the president looking at his polling when he's weighing all of these options? Is the president looking at...
It's not good. That's not good.
My goodness, that's a heck of a question. He's not looking, ma'am, let me just stop you right there. The Commander-in-Chief is not looking at polling or considering the electoral calendar when he's defending.
Oh, he's definitely not. Because if he was, he'd be like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this. This is like kind of dumb. Ma'am, that's one heck of a question. Yeah, well, he should be, actually. I think he should be looking maybe a little bit. He's like, ma'am, you're so wrong. Biden is doing this because he's just nutty with it. There's not really any other reason. There's no rhyme or reason, if we're being for real, about the situation in Israel. We don't fully understand it. Well, except for me, John Kirby. I love what Biden is doing. But, you know, a lot of people, ma'am, are calling what Biden is doing sicko mode. He is going full tilt. Doesn't matter. Pro-Israel unconditionally. Doesn't care if he loses an election. Doesn't even know that this is an election year, really. I mean, I've asked him.